Hey everybody, welcome to the SRS files slash institutionalized. Got a new episode today, episode number 4, with our guest Raina, and it's going to be a good episode. She was there for 4 years, and yeah, she's got a really interesting story, and I'll let you guys listen to it. So here we go. Here's her story, and enjoy, and I'll see you at the end. Thanks. Hey everybody, welcome to the SRS podcast, the SRS Files podcast, sorry. And yeah, let's get started. Today we have, can you tell us your name, please?
My name is Raina Fenstermaker.
All right, and how old are you?
I am 33 years old.
33, and how old were you when you were at SRS?
I was 14 years old.
14. Okay, so the first question I always get to is pickup. What was your pickup like? Do you remember, or
I didn't have a pickup.
so were you volunteered to go, or?
So, I guess I'll give a bit of context. So, I was driven to SRS by my then father. So what we did is we left on, gosh, I can't even remember what day it was. We left one day, we stayed overnight someplace, I think it was in Nevada, and then we got to Utah the next day, like late the next day.
Were you like, did you know you're going to Sorensons Ranch, or did they say, oh, we're going somewhere fun like Disneyland or something?
So I come from Southern California, so I would have known pretty immediately if we weren't going to Disneyland. Um, but so I was given a choice by my then mother. And what she told me was, she said, look, I don't want you at home anymore. So you can either go to juvenile detention or you can go to this school that we picked out in Utah. And so at 14 years old, like my choice was jail or a psychiatric institution.
Okay, so
I picked
any
the
kid,
lesser of two evils.
yeah, any
And
kid
went
would
with
probably have
Sorenson.
said, okay, Sorenson's Ranch sounds nice. It has horses, it has school, therapy,
Yeah.
could be a great experience from how it sounds. So with that being said, can you tell me about your first impressions of Sorenson's Ranch?
Um, my first thought when we drove up is that this place looked a little rundown.
Okay.
And it looked old, but it was out in the middle of nowhere. So it did get to a point where I just kind of accepted the fact that this is where I was going to be for a while. And yeah, I think the first person I remember meeting was Tom.
Okay.
And yeah, they stuffed me in an orange jumpsuit, told me I was level 2, and then basically turned me out to the populace. So
Okay.
first impressions from that was just like confused. I was very confused. I was like, fuck, okay, now what do I do? Like, I'm
You
not
just
allowed to wear regular clothes? What the shit is this?
So yeah, you're just kind of basically feeling it out and kind of confused and not sure
Yeah.
what life was going to be like. Now, when when you got there, have you ever heard of Mormons?
Um, no, I did not know of Mormons until even after I had gotten there. I didn't know anybody was Mormon. Um, but
So you were there the whole time, you didn't know anybody was Mormons or hear about Mormons.
no, I had no clue what Mormons were when I got there.
And but when you were there, You didn't
I
hear anything?
learned. I
Okay,
learned. Yeah.
I just misunderstood. Okay, so you didn't know, similar to my story, I didn't even know or hear what a Mormon was before I got there. And then
Right.
once I got there, I knew pretty quickly what Mormons were and a little bit about it. Not much because it was they're kind of like almost like the hick versions of Mormons, if sort of say. It was a
Yeah.
very, like Brandon said in that first podcast I put out, it was a poor example of Mormons.
Yeah. And then like some of the people there really made me feel like I had stepped into a weird pocket out of perdition where everybody is just, that level of hick. Um, but yeah, it it was weird. It was very, very weird. I went from being in a city with millions upon millions of people to being in a town that was literally 1 square mile in the middle of nowhere, Utah. Like I had no idea what to expect.
Like there wasn't a town close by. The closest one was maybe 30 miles, which was Richfield.
Richfield,
And that was it.
yeah. And even so, Richfield only has 50,000 people there. At the time, there weren't that many people.
So can you I lost my questions. Come on, phone. Okay, so can you tell me why your parents sent you there? I know you said you had your choice and whatnot, but what did you, in your opinion, do to get sent to this place? What made your parents decide to send you to a place like this?
Excuse me. It was kind of a mutual agreement, let's say. I absolutely despised the people who raised me. They knew that, and from what I could understand is that they didn't like me at all either. So they'd kept me in therapy for a few years, gotten nowhere. But ultimately, the reason that I had problems with my parents is because as a transgender person, I wasn't allowed to be my real self. I had to be what they wanted me to be. And they wanted me to be their picture perfect son. And I
So
was,
you didn't do drugs, you didn't misbehave, you just wanted to be yourself, and they were kind of just saying, no, you can't be yourself. You were going to put you in an institution and goodbye. Like,
so,
sorry, I don't mean to be rude.
so let me put it to you this way. I learned to lie from my then mother, who started lying to me in order to get me to do what she wanted me to do. And then I learned how to manipulate people because same parent would manipulate me in order to do what she wanted me to do.
So you're pretty prepared for Sorensons Ranch already. You know how to manipulate, you know how to lie.
Yeah. And then I learned how to steal from said same parent because she would literally steal my stuff and just take it from me.
So
So
it wasn't a very great upbringing, and it wasn't a very good place for you to be where you were.
no, absolutely
And
not.
and your parents were the ones who were in control, and they decide we're going to either send you to this institution or you can go live it out at a board, not boarding school, a what do you call it, juvie center.
Yeah.
So we're what was I going to say? Yeah, I'll try to remember what I was going to say, but I'll start with the next question. Can you tell me about the level system?
Um Sure. The level system is put in place. It was implemented to provide a form of structure for the life of whomever was going to Sorenson's at the time. So, you know, basically the less you did to irk their ire, the higher your level you could be. And there was a ridiculous point system that you also had um, to be mindful of. Basically, if you were caught swearing, then you would more than likely receive a drop in level. If you were caught kissing somebody, that was also a level drop. But there were so many different infractions, it was hard to keep track of them all. So you could be dropped in level for not doing well enough in school. I mean, like, just what the way that I'm not saying the level system was a bad idea, but the way it was implemented was terrible.
Okay. And what was it like being on level 1?
I was only on level 1 once in my entire stay there.
That's amazing. That's a big feat.
Um, well, a good liar and a master manipulator would be able to get out of just about anything, and I was. Um, hell, I remember Norm making me and another kid go on like a 2-hour hike in front of his office because we got in a fight. Normally, that would have been a level 1 offense. Like, just whatever level you are now level 1, and you would have been sent to isolation. So,
So just for the people watching, can you explain a little bit what level 1 would entail, and then also what the isolation room is?
okay, so level 1 came with several conditions, I would say, that had to be met in order for you to progress out of level 1. So, for example, if you were level 1, first and foremost, you wouldn't go to school. You would be sent to go work on the farm, the ranch, part of Sorensons Ranch school. And when you weren't doing that, you were put in what they called isolation. And basically, in isolation, it was a small building with 6 bays in it. Each bay had a bed. And what you would do when you weren't eating or working is that you would sit on your bed and you would stare at a wall for hours until it was time to go to bed. If it was a weekend, they would wake you up at 7 o'clock in the morning and they would shuffle you into the gym and they would make you do a workout. Basically, I could phrase it up in 2 words: prison PE. That's the only thing I can really think of, because it was typically an hour or more of constant, consistent calisthenics. So running, jumping jacks, burpees, mountains, you name it, you did it. And then when you were done with the workout, you would go eat breakfast. And once you were done eating breakfast, you would go on a 10-mile hike. And then you would rinse and repeat on Sunday. So you hiked 20 miles in a weekend.
So you're pretty much either sitting at the edge of your bed staring at the wall, or you're in the gym doing a workout.
Yeah.
And then
all
when
while
you
being
would,
in a bright orange jumpsuit.
And then when you would eat, they would send you back to the isolation room and they'd bring you the food, or you would eat in the cafeteria?
No, isolation was true to its word. They brought food out to you. You did not go in and eat with everybody else.
So they let you out, but they did a very brutal, tough exercise. Made you do a brutal exercise.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you were allowed to get out of isolation and just enjoy maybe 5 minutes of free time to get some air. It was constant stare at the wall or do a hard workout.
Exactly.
Okay. What was it like working on the farm? Tell me what you remember working on the farm.
Um, so, um, working a ranch is insanely difficult. Um, there were 30 head of horses, there was 150 head of cattle, there were 25 head of bison, there was an African water buffalo, there was an emu, goats, chickens, rabbits, pigeons, pigs. So all of these animals needed care. And so, you would have to muck the stalls and remove the refuse from the stalls. You would have to feed and water the horses and the pigs and the goats and the chickens and all of these different animals. And then if you weren't doing that, what you were more likely doing was hauling hay. So the idea is they would grab a couple of guys with a big truck and a big trailer. You would drive somewhere, usually another farm. You would drive out into the field, you would pick up the bales of hay, and you would stack them on the truck. And sometimes that would go on for 90 minutes while you were just filling this entire trailer full of hay, sometimes 12 feet high and, 20 feet long worth of hay, which is a lot of hay. And then you would drive back and then unload it. And that's typically what happened in as far as ranch work is concerned. There could be there could be days that you would be fixing fences. There'd be days you'd be fixing corrals. There'd be days that you would be filling the grain silo. So there was just a lot to do.
Okay. That paints a pretty big picture of the work that was entailed when you were working on the farm, and I feel like you have a very good memory of it.
Well, it took up a significant portion of my life. So yeah.
So, how long were you at Sorensons Ranch?
So, like I said before, I was there from November of 2002 until July of 2006. So, roughly, I want
About
to say
four
like
years.
about 4 years. Yeah.
So that's a long time. Most people go there sometimes 3 months, 6 months, maybe a year, maybe 2 years. But 4 years is a significant, long time to be at this ranch.
Yes. I was what was called a lifer.
Like,
Yeah.
I think that's what I was gonna say at before when I kind of said, "Oh, I forgot what I was gonna say." I was gonna say, did you know when you went to the ranch that you were gonna be there until you were 18 years old, or did you just show up thinking, "I don't know how long I'm gonna be here. Hopefully, it's 3 months."
Um, so for the first year, I thought there was a chance I could go home. But after the first year, I knew there was no chance. I was never going home.
Yeah, that's tough. That's got to be a super hard thing to deal with when at that age.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell me your three worst experiences and then followed by your top three best experiences in the long time you were there, if you can.
Um, I would say level one was probably the third worst experience. Um, the second worst experience was the length of time I spent there. I grew very disparate, and depressed and sad. Um, and the first worst experience that I could possibly say would be just the constant low grade, sometimes high grade abuse that this place just threw at you.
Did you witness a lot of abuse at this place with the 4 years you were there?
Sure.
Mental, physical?
Yeah, definitely a lot of mind games, especially from the people that claimed to be therapists. But definitely mental abuse, definitely physical abuse. It's not okay when a 325-pound guy tackles a 110-pound kid. And like physically restraining somebody against their will never helps any situation. And yeah, it happened a lot. I witnessed it a lot, and I never agreed with it.
So what were the restraints like?
Um, so the restraint techniques that they used would typically be reserved for law enforcement. And the only reason that I know this is because my military occupation was military police. So I got this training. And it's called ICIO, but it's intervention, control, and command. So basically, if somebody throws a punch at you, what you would do is you would grab that wrist, pull it behind the person, and then twist it the opposite direction. So the person would have their hand up like this, and it gives you an incredible amount of control over a person's movements, because as soon as they move to do something else or get away from you, all you have to do is force their arm up a little higher, and the pain will shut down their thought process. So there was a lot of that mixed with leg sweeps. So the person would be immobile in pain and then immediately face planted down into the ground. Very, very rough, very, very unnecessary. Just something that you shouldn't do on kids.
Have you ever witnessed anybody breaking any arms or legs or?
So I witnessed one thing, and it was incredibly difficult to experience, because what had happened is that some of these kids were sometimes 16, 17. They were more developed. A lot of them had started lifting weights and bulking up, because what else are you supposed to do? Might as well get in shape. And so, whenever one of these bigger guys kind of went off the rails, it was always more difficult to get them to calm down or to get them physically restrained. But I remember one scenario where one of these larger gentlemen kicked one of the staff in the knee, and his knee did this. So the top was next to the bottom. And so
The staff member's knee.
the staff member's knee, yes. And so he just straight up kicked the staff member's knee. The knee went snap. And this staff member, who was a former Honduran presidential bodyguard. So he's the one who taught all of the restraint techniques. It was him who got kicked in the knee. He still managed to take this kid down and hold him there while this kid literally melted down completely.
What do you mean by melted down?
he had a complete mental break. He he was overtaken by what I would say now is a severe psychosis. He did not know that he had psychosis, because typically people who are in the midst of psychosis do not know it is psychosis. So when you're in the midst of psychosis, your ability to think rationally goes right out the window. It's one of the first things to go. And so at that point, you're just kind of acting on all instinct, whether it be what you say, what you hear, what you see, it's all being overridden by this psychosis. So effectively, he was no longer there. And it was just his subconscious running the show. And so I managed to pick up this staff member's walkie-talkie and I got him some help because I knew he was hurt and I knew he needed help. Within a minute, there were other people there. They were able to take this person away, get him the help that he needed. And then I literally watched the staff member with a broken knee get up, walk over to a bench, sit down, and then he just popped his own knee back into place.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
That's crazy.
It swelled up to about the size of a small watermelon, and he was in a wheelchair for like 6 months.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's intense.
Yeah, it was pretty insane. The whole thing was insane. We were just in the gym playing basketball, and just like a switch went off.
You just kicked him for no reason?
There was like a momentary pause before he kicked him, but yeah, it was really out of the blue.
Huh. That sounds a little crazy.
Yeah.
So you mentioned 3 of your worst experiences, which have been level 1, dealing with the craziness of this place, and there was one more I can't remember.
The length of time I was there.
Length of time. So can you tell me something positive and maybe the 3 best times you had there?
Best moments. Number 1, anytime we went camping. I love to camp. It didn't matter if we went down to Lake Powell or went out on a horse camp out. It didn't matter. I loved camping. Number 2 was the fact that Sorensons, unlike most high schools of the day, still offered things like wood shop, welding, auto shop, leather shop, and 4-H as electives. And I took all 5. And so I was able to gain valuable skills that I still use to this day. Third best experience? I would have to say anytime we went skiing or snowboarding.
That
was
nice.
Always fun. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds nice and positive. Anything to do to kind of get away from the feeling of being trapped in this institution is a great feeling.
Oh, yeah.
So, in your opinion, do you feel that the ranch has helped you?
Not in the way that it should have.
In what kind of way has it helped?
I learned a lot of valuable life skills when I was there. I learned how to craft things with my hands, out of wood, out of metal. I have knowledge. I can take apart my lawnmower because of that place, fix it, and put it back together. I know how to ride a horse because of that place. I know how to herd cattle because of that place. There are a lot of things that I gained while I was there.
So you took advantage of the skills that you're able to learn from this place.
Exactly. But the way they didn't help me was really in my mental health. My mental health suffered while I was there because they just simply didn't have the tools, knowledge, or capability to help somebody like me.
And this is a place that claims to help teens with all kinds of struggles in life.
Right.
no matter what it is, they have therapy school and counselors, and that they're great at it.
All I can say is that I really truly hope that there is never another transgender person there again.
What was it like being a transgender person there?
Um, because they were constantly shoving their religion down your throat and their ultra conservative viewpoints. There was no, their minds weren't open enough to the concept of somebody being born in the wrong body. That did not compute with them. So as a trans person, it was terrible. It was absolutely horrific. I was forced to stay inside the closet. I couldn't come out. I couldn't be myself.
Did you suffer from any kind of abuse or people saying mean things or the staff being derogatory? Because I remember the staff specifically.
I was very, very good at keeping what I was a secret because I had to.
That's tough.
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah.
Wow. That's got to be really tough. So, would you send your kids to this place?
Never in a million years.
And why not?
Because here's my thought. If you do not have the capacity to recognize that your own child needs help and that what you are doing isn't working, your first thought should not be to send your child away. Your first thought should have a conversation with your child and ask them what's wrong. A lot of parents skip this step. There were so many parents that I had heard from different people throughout the years that I was there that said, if my parents never took me to therapy, my parents never asked me what was wrong. So as a parent, it would never cross my mind. I would first make every effort to take care of my own child's needs and wants over and above sending them to some place in the care of somebody I don't know, I don't trust, I don't respect, to take care of my kid. No, never.
Do you feel that the staff were qualified? Do you feel the therapists were qualified to be therapists or vice versa?
So I think the therapists that worked there had all worked there too long, and they had gotten into this kind of cookie cutter, one size fits all therapy. And that is super not the case. Every patient is different. Every patient is unique, has unique needs and wants. As far as the regular staff were concerned, none of them should have ever worked there. They weren't trained enough. They didn't have education backing up training. They didn't have any kind of that. They would just hire whoever to work there. And when you're dealing with the mental health and general well-being of somebody else's children, you need to have a degree in your pocket. Some kind of degree saying that you are trained in medicine or you are trained in child psychology or something along those lines. But
so it's fair to say that the staff were very unqualified.
Very, very
And
unqualified.
as far as the therapists, do you believe they had certificates and they had some type of qualifications to be therapists, in your opinion?
Yes, a lot of them, well, all of them, from what I could tell, had some kind of certification or degree in the field that they were working in. But like I mentioned earlier, they had worked there for so long and seen so many kids that they had gotten into this one size of therapy fits all, and you just can't do that.
Yeah, that sounds fair. Do you feel like the therapy there may help you at all? Did you feel like there was any of the groups that helped you?
So therapy there only helped me in one way, and that it helped me realize that the problems that I experienced at home weren't my fault. And that's it.
Did they agree with you, or did you just come across that on your own?
Um, Eventually, because I was able to have a therapist, the same therapist, for about 2 years before she left and went on to bigger and better things. But in by the end of that 2 years, um, she was of the mindset that I was of, which is I was never going to go back home, and that what had happened to me at my home wasn't my fault. And then I'd switch therapists and basically had to start all over again. And I just never made any progress in therapy after that.
So you had one good therapist, helped you a little bit, and after that, you didn't feel like you got much help.
Exactly.
So can you tell me a little bit about life after leaving the ranch?
So when I left Sorenson's on July 5th, I was on my way down to St. George, Utah to go meet with my Air Force recruiter. And then once I met with him, I was stuck on a plane bound for Salt Lake City. Once I got to Salt Lake City, I went to the local military entrance processing station where I took my oath to serve in the United States Air Force. From there, I was sent off to basic training in Lackland Air Force Base, San Antonio, Texas.
Cool. And you must have been really happy to just kind of have some freedom away from Sorensons Ranch and be part of society.
I was happy to have freedom for about 2 days before
before basic training.
Before basic training began and my life became, well, basic training was pretty easy for me. I basically went from one institution to another institution, but they wanted people who were blank slates. They didn't expect me to come in, excuse me, a person who already had a blank slate. So, basic training was a lot of fun for me. I basically just got to work out every morning, work out every evening, learn some awesome military history and protocol. It was very, very easy for me to go through basic training just because of where I'd come from, Sorenson's.
Did you feel like this was more structured and more, it was people were more qualified to than Sorenson's Ranch was?
Oh, by light years, because the United States military was invested in me. They were paying money to make me better. Sorenson's never did that.
And they were getting paid, and you were there for 4 years. Did you feel like that they cared about you at Sorenson's?
Eventually, yeah, more towards the end when I had been there, like my third year, my last 6 months at Sorenson's were pretty awesome by most standards. I had finished school, so I basically just went to Steve, the science teacher's room, and I played chess with him all day. And that's basically how I spent my, or I went to the library and just fucking played video games all day.
Video games?
Yeah.
There's video games in the library?
I was the only person at Sorenson's who knew how to A, get onto the internet, and B, I knew where to get games you could put on floppy disks.
Wow.
Yeah.
I should have been hanging out with you, man.
But yeah, like I was the person to come to if you ever needed to like send an email to one of your friends back home and just be like, hey, this is where I'm at. I was the person to come talk to.
See, I remember getting on the internet, but it was mostly, I would be very secretive about it, and I would be able to press like on those ancient computers, press like the internet thing, get on there, and then the most thing I can do is like go look up like lyrics to a song.
Yeah.
But I never really told anybody because I didn't want to get in trouble.
Yeah, because you weren't supposed to be allowed to get on the internet, but
Yeah, but they didn't know how to use that stuff either.
no. The systems administrator um, for Sorensons Ranch School, let's just say that her information security skills were severely lacking. So what ended up happening is on those library computers, there was a program called Deep Freeze. And basically what this did is that it took a snapshot of the computer's memory. And if you made changes while the computer was booted, those changes would only stay until you rebooted the computer. And then the computer would be reset back to that image that it took earlier. Well, that had an administrative password on it, and the password was password. So, yeah, once I figured that out, I was pretty much, I had more control over the computers than she did.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome. So, do you feel like you still have any trauma after 20 years or so since you've been there?
Uh, Collectively, yes. The whole experience was very traumatic.
So you would say it's still something that you deal with today.
Um, Thankfully, that trauma has been laid to rest, and I'm at peace with it. So it no longer affects me today. That's why I'm able to talk about it.
That makes sense, yeah. I feel for me, the hasn't gone away, and the only way to kind of heal from it is to be able to do these podcasts and talk about it. So
Well, I'm happy to be a part of your healing.
I appreciate that. So I always ask this question: do you recall any like sexual conduct at the ranch?
Yeah, I got into a little bit myself. I was caught having sex with a girl, and that's how I got my level 1.
Was there
Totally
any
worth it, though.
Was there anything you remember, any stories you remember of any staff members or anything that was?
Um, Gosh, I remember Julie Winslow getting in a lot of trouble for doing drugs with the girls, basically.
What
Like
kind
she
of
never
drug?
gotten in. Gosh, I can't remember. It's been so long, but yeah, that's something that would have definitely gotten somebody put in handcuffs anywhere else. But since it was Sorenson's, they just kind of dealt with it internally and called it good. And that's basically, if they could sweep it under the rug, they would.
And that goes to say the next question would be, what do you feel like the people who run this place are like? The owners of the Sorensons, the owners, the people that own it. What is your opinion on these people? Do you feel like they want to help kids, that they have any compassion or love in their hearts? Do you feel like that they're maybe just running this place to make money, or do you like, what's your opinion on these
So I
people?
think that Jill and Shane Sorenson, the current owners of Sorensons Ranch, um, I think they have good hearts and they want to do good and they want to improve people's lives. But I also think that they need a more direct, more humble, more hands-on approach, because of what they've essentially done is they've essentially laid out how they want the business to be run, and then it's up to the staff to interpret those wishes and implement them. And I think there is serious miscommunication between what Jill and Shane want and what is observed in the actual situation.
Okay, so that's fair. So you think that they have good intentions, but you don't
Right.
believe that the ranch is a great place at all.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I kind of have a different opinion. I kind of feel like that the owners, Jill and Shane, or whatever their names may be, are pretty much probably the worst scum of the earth people that can exist. Because if they're going to be having like sexual misconduct and allegations and things swept under the rug, and they're still sweeping it under the rug, and they're kind of just not giving a shit, what kind of people are they?
Um, I think that shit does roll uphill, and they have a lot of it to deal with. But that's what I mean. That's what I meant when I said they need to take a more humble and hands-on approach, because they're very hands-off. All they really want to do is sit there and collect the money, which understandably you can't blame them for it. It's a lot of money coming in every single month.
And with that being said, do you feel like they have that, like you said earlier, you think they have a good heart and a good intention to help people? Because from what I understand is if you're going to be sweeping things under the rug, that is things that could potentially put these staff members in jail or the Sorensons in jail. How does that make them sound? It doesn't sound like they really have a very good intention. They just want to keep, like you said, getting the money.
Yeah, I mean, so that's like half of them. Like the good part of them comes with just my own personal experience with them, not specifically with my experience plus the ranch and them. So like when you take Sorenson's Ranch away from Jill and Shane, they become wonderful people. When you add Sorenson's Ranch to Jill and Shane, they are the fucking worst people on the planet. So what they were willing to do for me after I got out of Sorenson's, because I was joining the military, there was a possibility that I would have to wait some months before I could ship out. They were willing to put me up at their brother's place for free while I waited.
That's admirable. That's admirable for sure.
And yeah, like I said, outside of Sorenson's, they're decent people. But as soon as they start getting into that, everything changes.
Would you say that is kind of, it's almost like a cult in a way that the whole town of Koosharem works at Sorenson's Ranch, and it's a 500 population. Most of them work directly or indirectly with this ranch, and it's kind of
Yes.
like a cult. So they're kind of like they have to run their cult business, and our lives are kind of caught in the middle of it, and they're kind of like, oh, here's another potential $4,000 a month. Let's get him into this crazy place, and we don't give a shit about him. We're not trying to help him, but we're gonna lure him in. We're gonna lure his parents in with this crazy brochure.
Yeah. And I would say that part of what makes them so horrible is how misleading they are.
How are they misleading?
Their their brochure, their uh all the smiling faces, the testimonials on their website, those particular elements of what they put in their advertisements are so rare. You don't see kids smiling at Sorenson's. Like, it is not a happy place. So, like, right off the bat, they're pandering to the public as, hey, this is a great place. This is what we do to fix your kid.
Or the
And
fact that they claim that they have great therapy and great schooling. I mean, the school in itself wasn't very, you didn't learn very much, I would sort of say. You would be doing the bare minimum and they would give you the credits. Like it was
yeah,
great to get the credits, but they weren't teaching you much. I remember finishing my as much math as I can, and I still can't do any algebra or any of that kind of stuff. It was
Yeah,
very bare minimum, but
so
they gave you the credits.
I got an A in pre-calculus when I was at Sorensons. I got my entire high school education there. I started college this year. The next logical step from pre-calculus is calculus 1. When I got to calculus 1, I was unable to understand any of it.
Because I've heard from past episodes I've been doing that it's everyone agrees that the schooling was very great to get the credits, like they said, but you weren't learning anything. It was a very poor example, like
Yeah.
you weren't learning much. It was the bare minimum. People say that they were just doing the same books over and over and over. And it's great to get the credits, but they weren't really teaching anything.
No. Not at all.
So, is there anything else that you feel like you would want to talk about?
Not specifically. We covered a lot, but a lot of what I remember from that place is just bits and pieces. Some things come in clearly, some things don't. But I'd have to remember a bit more.
Well, was there any stories that maybe come to mind that you think would be interesting for the podcast, or?
Not specifically, not any that come to mind that I haven't already spoken of.
Well, I can think of one question I forgot to ask was your first phone call. Do you remember your first phone call?
I do. It was very tense and very estranged.
You were pretty much watched and prepped before you did the phone call.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it probably wasn't too easy because you can't say, oh, hey, this place is actually not what I expected.
Yeah, you couldn't really tell the truth to your parents about what was going on or anything like that.
Did you feel that when you went to this place that you kind of felt abandoned?
Oh, very much so.
And do you feel like that's
I feel like it was a convenient place for me to be while they went off and did the rest of their things. So a perfect example is they took the rest of the family on a month-long vacation to Europe and left me in Utah.
And that hurts.
Oh, hell yeah. I'd always wanted to see Europe. I still want to see Europe.
Do you think that because you felt abandoned at such young of an age, that may have still affected you and that still hurts you to this day? You think
Very
that's
much
something
so.
do you think that's something that kind of sticks with you?
When your family abandons you, that stays with you for the rest of your life.
Do you think when people say, oh, you have abandonment issues, you think that comes from feeling abandoned when you're a kid? Is that
Very
where it
much
comes
so.
from? That's probably where that comes from, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that, like we said, some of the trauma that stays with you. I know you said you worked through a lot of it, but there could be a chance that there's still a lot of things that you have to work on still to this day because of Sorensons Ranch.
It may take me several more decades of working through my experiences with my family before I truly am free of it.
Yeah, it's definitely done a number on me as well. I feel like these are things that I might not ever heal from, and sometimes I tell myself, oh, it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. But why am I still healing after 20 years?
Yeah. Um, do you talk to your parents at all?
Yeah, I'm like best friends with my mom and my stepfather, but at the same time, I don't feel like we'll ever have the same relationship as we did before or what I want.
Right. I haven't spoken to my parents since 2008.
So 2 years after you left the ranch.
Yeah.
And is
So,
that because you never got along with them from the first place, or do you just feel like there's different reasons?
I became very, very embittered towards them. So my parents um, aren't poor by any means. They spent more than $500,000 for me to stay there as long as I did.
Because it's what, 4 G's a month to send your kid there?
When I got there, it was $5,500 a month to start. And then the longer I was there, the more the cost increased.
Wow.
Yeah. My
Do you
parents,
sorry, go on.
it's okay. My parents had the audacity to, what they did when they came to see me when I graduated basic training. And they brought with them every single birthday check that my grandfather had ever given me for my birthday, and they forced me to sign them over to them.
Because they spent all their money sending you there?
Yeah.
That's kind of weird
Yeah, like I had to pay
and
them for doing
hurtful.
their job.
That's weird, painful, and hard to hear.
Yeah. So I have not a single cent of anything that my grandfather had wanted for me.
So it was a larger sum of money. It was almost like when your grandparents passed kind of thing. They left you something and you had to sign it over to your parents.
So they were all $100 bonds, and the longer you keep a bond, the more it matures. And some of those bonds I had had for 16, 17 years. Um, if I had kept them all until they'd all matured at the age of 20, I would have had something like $100,000.
Holy moly.
So it wasn't a small sum of money.
Wow. Yeah, I can understand why you have this kind of resentment against your parents for, first of all, sending you to Sorensons Ranch school, and second of all, of kind of not really feeling like they're giving you as much love as you deserved by coming to visit you only after the basic training and then kind of handing over whatever life savings that you have ever acquired or had at that age. So I
Yeah.
can kind of understand why you feel that resentment, and it sucks to hear that you haven't talked to them since 2008. But I feel like with reason you have your reasons, and I think that's fair and understandable from what you just said.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm definitely inclined to agree. I don't refer to them as my parents any longer.
I did notice when you started the podcast, you said my then parents.
Yeah.
So I was going to ask you it during the podcast, but we got so into the conversation that I didn't come up.
Yeah, no, they are no longer my parents. I no longer have any siblings. I chose to keep my last name in honor of my grandfather.
Your guys, you had respect for him. He didn't have anything to do with Sorensons.
No.
So you kind of feel like a lot of this abandonment and stuff from your parents, and now that you don't talk to them, probably stemmed from them sending you away to Sorenson's Ranch school when you were a kid.
Yeah.
So it's almost safe to say is when you told me, yeah, you kind of work through all this stuff and you don't let it bother you to this day, but it's never going to go away. You have holes inside you that need to be repaired.
Yeah, and it wasn't just me that it affected. It affected everybody in my extended family on both mom and dad's side. So let me put it to you what happened. Um, 4 people got divorced. Um, there are several members on my dad's side that no longer speak to each other, nor do they speak to my dad. On my mom's side, none of her 3 brothers will ever speak to her again because of what happened. Because they all felt kind of how I do. They were like, well, if you think that sending your kid is okay in the first place, you shouldn't have had kids in the first place.
So now other people have kind of came onto your side and decided, I'm not going to have anything to do with her because of the way that they treated you.
Yeah.
Well, that speaks volume of why you don't talk to your parents in the first place. It's obviously not just you.
Yeah.
So yeah, this place has definitely put a lot of trauma and put a lot of more pain in your life than you could imagine. It's been about 20 years. And at the same time, you were only there for it was a long time, but 4 years out of your life compared to 20 years out of your life of pain and misery is a lot of suffering and a lot of hurt. And I don't think it's fair for a school to exist to exist like Sorensons Ranch School that's going to put that much trauma and suffering in somebody's life.
I very much agree.
And that's why I think doing this podcast is so important because we're able to shed a little bit of light about how horrible this place is and these people that run it are, and as well as how much healing we have left to do and how much this place has really affected a lot of us. And we're all in it together. We're all like one big fucked up family, you know?
Yeah. And the great thing is that I would say there were 3 generations of people that were there while I was there. And I have friends from every fucking generation. So like I have friends that don't know each other because they were there at different times, but I was still there.
Yeah, that
So
makes sense because you were there for 4 years, and most people, the longest they'll be there is a year,
yeah.
2 years if they're unlucky. 4 years is a long time. But to be
Yeah.
honest, the older, like maybe 10 years before we went there, people were there like you, like 4 years, long time. And I was talking to someone, I think who was there for maybe 2 or 3 years. And that's another question. Do you have any stories or anything you remember of hearing about how Sorenson's was prior from us being there? Like, do you remember any stories about any
Sure.
abuse or anything crazy like that?
Not so much from like an abusive point of view, but I do know a little bit of the history of Sorensons Ranch School before it was an inpatient residential treatment facility. It was a summer camp. And
1958, they opened, it said online.
yeah, so they started out as a summer camp. A lot of the staff that worked there when we were there, they went to Sorenson's when it was a summer camp. From what I remember, it wasn't until the 80s until they began making the change from summer camp to inpatient residential treatment facility. Um, so that's just a little bit of the history that I know of.
Yeah, I heard that too, and I felt like those times in the 80s and who knows till when were brutal times. Like I remember hearing stories about people being chained up to the fences and some violent stories. And
Yeah, I
from
heard
your
some.
from your experience, do you remember hearing anything like that?
Yeah. I remember in one of the male cabins, um, there was if you took a black light, shined it in the corner, there was a huge blood stain on the carpet from where one male student sexually assaulted another male student who bled profusely all over the floor. So yeah, there was definitely some crazy stories like that. I remember when we tore down a couple of the cabins to rebuild them and make them new. And when we went through the walls of some of those old cabins, like there were drugs, there were porno magazines, there were like needles and pipes and just whatever was what you could think of as a recreational substance. If you can think of it, it was in those walls.
Wow, that's so crazy because being there at those times, you would wish you had your hands on those substances, those pornos, those whatever, because we
I
were young
remember
kids and we would have probably broke down all the walls if we knew that was there.
oh yeah. So I remember somebody there were always people trying to sneak drugs in. One of them was actually successful. Was able to it was ingenious. He took apart his clock radio and he put the cocaine baggie in his clock radio and then screwed it back up, put it back in the package, wrapped up the package again so it looked new, and then brought it with him.
He's like, check out my new clock radio.
Yeah, like I'm gonna be pimping. Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard of stories of people successfully bringing in drugs, and I've also heard about stories of people getting caught also too with it after.
Yep, he got caught.
Here's another story off subject. Do you remember anything in the farm with the animals of any animals being treated mispoorly or being killed or tortured by students or staff or mistreated?
Yeah. It was mainly the rabbits. Um, there were a couple of boys who liked dropping them off the top of the barn.
And they would kill them?
The rabbits' legs would break, or their back would break, and then they would take this paralyzed rabbit and they would throw it to the pigs.
And no one got in trouble for doing that.
This was just a story. I never experienced it for myself because if I had, I probably would have pushed them out the fucking top of the barn myself.
Have you heard of any stories of anybody sexually assaulting any of the animals in that kind of manner?
No, never heard about any bestiality or anything like that. At least not to my own recollection. No, not that I can remember.
It's good. Even if you did, it's probably something you would want to probably block out as well.
Yeah, some of these stories are just like, holy shit. I remember there was one kid who tried to blow up the school.
Is that Lucas?
No, Chris.
Okay.
Chris B.
Chris B. Oh yeah, I've been in contact with him recently.
Yeah, he tried to blow up the school.
What happened there?
Basically, basically he was fed up with being at Sorenson, so he concocted a master plan to blow up the school, and he made himself a couple of pipe bombs and stuffed them in the side of the wall in his locker in his room. He did get caught because, I mean, for fuck's sake, he had pipe bombs. Somebody was going to notice. And somebody did notice, and they were like, are you gonna blow something up? And he's like, yeah, I'm gonna blow this motherfucker up. And so they were like, yeah, no, I can't let you do that. And they went and told staff. So he got in trouble for that. But we all called him the Unabomber after that.
I vaguely remember that. That's funny. I kind of would have encouraged him to do it. I'd be like, that'd be great. Maybe they can send some of us home after that.
Yeah, me too. I would have been like, hey man, I'll bring some marshmallows and we can make s'mores.
That's a pretty crazy story. Or about, do you remember about those guys that shot themselves up with horse tranquilizers when we were there?
I do remember that. I also remember the guys. I think Andy was his name. Andy huffed all the freon out of his air conditioner.
And I heard a story about one of the kids before our time huffing gas out of one of the trucks, and his lips went numb, and he couldn't get him off the truck, and he ended up dying. Did you hear
Um,
about that one?
I did not hear about that one, but I do remember the kid who liked to huff gas. Like there were several kids there that liked to huff gas. Um,
Well,
but yeah,
anything you can get your hands on, pretty much was the was the deal. I mean, we were a bunch of crazy kids, and we weren't even allowed to smoke cigarettes, drink a coffee. We weren't allowed to listen to CDs. I
no,
mean, we weren't allowed to read books, certain books. We weren't allowed to watch anything rated R.
no,
We were treated like little kid prisoners.
yeah, definitely. Definitely. It was definitely more like a prison than a treatment facility.
Yeah. I always refer to it as rehab, but I don't ever feel like it was anything close to a rehab. I feel like it was more of a youth detention center with culty vibes.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, is there anything else you can remember that sticks out that you want to talk about?
Um, I met a lot of great people there.
I think the only, like, if you ask me my top three things, it would be probably making friends with some of the people I made friends there, who I wish I was still friends with to this day. But for me being in Canada, it's kind of hard to be in touch and hang out and meet in real life with any of these people. So that was that kind of sucks, you know.
You live in Montreal, right?
Well, I'm from Montreal. I live in Victoria, BC now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Good weed out
yeah.
there.
Yeah, we probably have some of the best weed and stuff at BC Bud, you know.
Oh
But now that
yeah.
everything's legal, I mean, I think you can pretty much grow great weed indoors anywhere now. It's
Yeah.
not as high of a risk. And
It's legal here in Virginia.
is it?
Yeah, we're the first state in the South to legalize marijuana.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it got passed this year.
Oh, that's great. We don't need anybody getting in trouble for smoking a joint anymore, you know.
Fuck no. There are talks. There are plans by Republicans of all people to federally legalize marijuana. So hopefully that happens within the next couple of years.
Yeah, fingers crossed. It would be a great thing to be able to have one less thing. I mean, there's still people in jail for, you know, having an eighth of weed or whatnot, and I think that's just crazy to think about that.
It's absolutely ridiculous.
And the fact that most of us that went to this place, maybe the reason we went there is because we were smoking a little bit of weed, drinking a little bit like normal teenagers do,
Yeah.
and then you get sent to this crazy Mormon place. And
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
do you remember if you were taking any medication while you're at this place?
Nope. No medication. My parents refused.
So they wouldn't allow you to have any medications?
Nope. No antidepressants that could have helped. No anti-anxiety meds that could have helped. Nothing.
See, to me, that seems surprising because everybody that was at this facility, they doped them up on drugs and they didn't ask for their parents' permission. or it was easy for them to get their parents' permission because they were able to sway them any way they wanted, just the way how our parents were kind of bamboozled into the staff members or therapists saying he's not done his program yet. He needs to keep working his program.
Yeah.
So it's surprising to me to know that they didn't dope you up on drugs because I specifically remember everybody that was there waiting in a line at the end of the before bedtime to get their pills or in the morning to get their pills, and it was pretty crazy for these young kids, probably about half of them that were at this facility taking lithium or some crazy drug that they probably weren't even really prescribed or needed. And I found also was very crazy is that all these kids were taking other people's drugs. They were cheeking their meds, which means they were putting it in their mouth a certain way. And when they shine the light and they say, "Open your, show me your tongue" and everything, they have it somewhere hidden in their cheek. And if they get caught, they'll get in trouble. But they take that risk. Every kid was taking those risks and sharing their drugs and trading, and everybody was using different types of pharmaceuticals, including myself. I remember also never getting in trouble. I was pretty smart there too. I wasn't very good at manipulating or anything, but I was just a smart fucking kid. I knew if anything I should do here is not get in trouble because first of all, I don't want to go to isolation. I don't want to be in a workout. I don't want
Yeah.
to be on level one. I want to be able to have as many privileges as I can, even if that requires me sticking my tail so far between my legs that it goes right out my mouth. And then I have to do that because that's how I'm going to get further and maybe out of this place sooner.
Yeah.
But I
And it
was still
was,
taking those drugs. I was still taking the risk and just to get high for a second,
yeah, I very much do remember.
which
Uh,
wasn't probably very COVID friendly, taking somebody else's drugs they had in their mouth.
no, not COVID friendly at all. All right.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't want to take up too much of your time. I mean, if there's anything else you want to add or anything, we can share or we can wrap it up. I mean, I still have some time if you want to talk. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just admiring your artwork.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it looks like you have many, many hours of lovely art pieces on you.
I went through a really bad relapse maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and what helped me get sober was the tattoos. So I was getting a tattoo pretty much every single day to get off the drugs, and years later, I'm still getting him and loving him, and it's every like they say, everybody has their own way of healing and dealing with things. And for me, I
Yeah.
can never heal going to an NA meeting, going to an AA meeting. As much as I admire people that do get help from it, for me it didn't work because I think I was so institutionalized that I didn't really trust or really feel like that kind of therapy helped. As soon as I left the
Yeah.
AA meeting, I was alone again, feeling abandoned again, like I did when I was a kid. What really helped me was just keeping my mind busy all the fucking time, talking to friends and doing activities, getting a tattoo, and then coming home and taking care of it. Then the next day looking at it, and then the next day getting another one, and so forth. By the time I'm so used to not doing the drugs anymore, I'm sober and I'm happy, and that changed my life around, and that's how I started to start cutting hair and became a barber was by being able to heal and find myself and so the tattoos really were like the path that led me to getting to where I needed to be today, which is owning my own business as a barber and being as successful as I feel like I am right now. I owe it all to the tattoos almost in a sense. It was
Yeah.
healing.
That's awesome. I'm really
Thank
glad.
you. Thank you.
Um, I my most recent OD was in 2018. I
OD,
Yeah, alcohol was my drug of choice.
and that's probably one of the most dangerous ones, I would say.
Yep. Um, I have a, I don't know if you can really see them, but these are my medications.
It's hard to tell with the light, but now that you pointed out, I can tell with the color of the bottles. Yeah.
Yeah, so I take 13 meds a day. I figured, hey, I'll just take my meds, I'll have a beer, I'll be good, and I'll just go upstairs and go to bed. I never made it upstairs to bed. Uh, I drank the beer, turned around to start walking up the stairs, got lightheaded, sat down, passed out, flatlined.
Wow.
So
How did
I
you
was
get to the hospital? Was someone else there?
so I was dead for about 5 minutes before I was able to be resuscitated. And then by the time that I came around, the ambulance was pulling up.
How fucked up is that? If you would have died that night, you haven't talked to your parents since 2008. Like, how do you think your parents would feel if that happened? You know, they feel like, oh fuck, maybe I shouldn't have sent her to SRS, and I wouldn't have had this time of not talking to my kid, and now never get to see them again.
I will say one of my former mother's favorite phrases, quote, "Too bad, so sad," end quote.
And that's the most positive and best way to be. If you can just go through life kind of being accepting of things. My favorite quote is, it is what it is.
Yeah.
And I feel like those are things that my actual therapist told me that I need to live by. He's like, I think when you tell me it is what it is, it's kind of makes you kind of deal with process things well. If you can just be like, oh, it is what it is. That's a great way to process things. And I kind of took it from him to kind of be like, that's my like life motto. It is what it is, you know?
Yeah. That's awesome though.
All right. Well, I feel like we kind of hit a lot of the subjects. I do
Yeah.
feel like there is so much more to talk about this place, and it's kind of hard to put it all into 1 hour, 2 hour kind of conversation. And
Yeah.
that's why I kind of think it would be great if we can reconnect at a later date, start with an episode number 2, and kind of relive a little bit more of these memories that we had when we were younger, and kind of
Yeah.
have a second part and kind of give the viewers a more of a picture of this place, and give us a chance to re chat again and come back to it.
Sounds good to me.
All right. With that being said, I'd love to just thank you so much for coming on here and pouring your heart out and being able to just be accepting to talking about it. And I think that's such a great thing, especially for me personally. And it helps me heal a little bit to hear your story and your side of things, and to know I'm not alone with my feelings and my trauma that I went through being at Sorensons Ranch. So I
You're
thank you.
absolutely not. Yeah, you're very welcome.
I can't thank you enough for that. And I really do hope the best for you. And I feel like since we were able to chat here, I feel like we're definitely going to be in touch. And I
Mhm.
definitely would like to be able to have you in my life as a friend, you know?
Likewise.
Awesome. So let's chat soon, and we'll end the podcast here, and we can recontinue it later down the road for a number 2.
Sounds great.
All right. Thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
All right. You're welcome. Later, Daryl.
Okay. Bye. All right. So that was interesting, and hope everybody enjoyed that last episode. I got a couple other things I might be putting out this week as well. There's a little bit of a bonus. So look out for that. And besides that, we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Thanks for the support. Leave your comments below. I'd love to hear it. If anybody wants to be on the podcast, just leave a comment or contact me, or I think leaving a comment would be the easiest way. So do that. And we'll see you next week.